I'm standing behind the counter at a pharmacy in Copenhagen when this guy walks in wearing cargo shorts and a college sweatshirt. It's March. It's 4 degrees Celsius outside. He's shivering, but he marches straight up to me and says, "I need some real medicine." Like, actual strength. He holds up a pack of paracetamol he bought at the grocery store. "This European stuff is too weak. You got anything that actually works?" I blink at him. "Sir, that's 500 milligrams, same as American Tylenol." He squints at the box. "But it says 500. In America, we take like way more than that." "You take 500 milligrams in America too." "It's the same compound." He shakes his head slowly, like I'm the confused one. "Nah, American medicine is stronger. Everyone knows that." He leaves without buying anything. 20 minutes later, his friend comes back and buys the exact same paracetamol. Apparently, his headache got worse. I track these stories full-time, not because they're funny, but because they reveal how cultural blind spots actually work. Most channels give you anecdotes. I give you patterns. If that distinction matters to you, you belong here. Subscribe. That same week, I watched an American woman argue with a bus driver in Oslo because he wouldn't accept her dollar bills. She kept saying, "It's USD, it's worth more than your money," while waving a 20 at him. The driver, in perfect English, explained that Norway uses kroner. She responded by speaking louder and slower, as if volume would change currency exchange policies. Then there was the guy at the train station in Prague, who got genuinely upset that the announcement wasn't in English. Not frustrated, upset. He told the information desk clerk that international stations should use international language, and couldn't understand why she found that funny. Prague's train station serves 27 million people a year. Maybe 8% are native English speakers. My personal favorite? The couple in a Reykjavik restaurant who sent back their fish because it tasted too fishy. The server explained it was caught that morning. They insisted it must be bad. In Iceland, where the fish comes from the ocean, they can literally see from the restaurant window. They ordered chicken instead, then complained it was expensive. Everything in Iceland is expensive. That's not a secret, but that was just the beginning. These stories pile up every single day, and after working in tourist-heavy areas across 3 different countries, I've started to see patterns. It's not about being dumb or rude. Most of these folks are perfectly nice people back home. It's something else. Something about crossing an ocean that makes common sense evaporate. And the ways it happens? They're more creative than you'd think. I worked as a tour guide in Edinburgh for 2 summers. You'd think a historic city in the UK would be straightforward for American visitors. You'd be wrong in ways that still keep me up at night. This woman in her 50s, expensive camera around her neck, stops me outside Edinburgh Castle. "Excuse me, how far is London from here?" I tell her it's about 400 miles south. She looks confused. "But we're in England, right?" I explain we're in Scotland. She nods, then asks, "Right, but Scotland is in England, isn't it?" I spend 5 minutes explaining the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and constituent countries. She listens politely, then says, "So it's like how Texas is in America." Close enough. I let it go. As she walks away, I hear her tell her husband, "London's just a few hours. We could do dinner there tonight." It's an 8-hour drive. The next week, a college-aged guy asks me where he can see Big Ben. I explain that's in London. He pulls out his phone and shows me his itinerary. Someone told him Edinburgh and London were basically the same trip. He's leaving tomorrow. He spent $3,000 to see Big Ben and has 48 hours in Scotland instead. Most people laugh at these stories. I study them because every mistake like this points to something deeper about how Americans see the world. I break that down every week here. Subscribe, and you'll start noticing it too. I watch his face fall in real time as he realizes he's in the wrong country. Not the wrong city, the wrong country. His girlfriend starts crying. They'd been planning this trip for a year. Then there's the couple who tried to drive to Paris from Edinburgh for lunch. They thought it was maybe 2 hours? It's 750 miles and requires a ferry, or the Channel Tunnel. They got as far as the Scottish border before checking their GPS and realizing France wasn't going to happen. They turned around and blamed their rental car's navigation system for being broken. The GPS was fine. Their understanding of European geography was not. But the absolute worst was the family who got angry at me for false advertising. They'd booked an England tour and were upset that Edinburgh Castle wasn't English. I explained, again, that Edinburgh is Scotland's capital. The dad cut me off. We paid for England. This is the UK, same thing. I tried explaining sovereignty, national identity, and why calling a Scot English is genuinely offensive. He didn't care. He wanted his money back because the brochure wasn't clear. The brochure was very clear. It said Scottish Highlands Tour in 48-point font. Here's the thing. Americans learn geography differently. They memorize state capitals and major U.S. cities. International geography is optional. So when they arrive in Europe, where countries the size of Ohio have millennia of distinct history, it breaks their mental model. They're not trying to be disrespectful. They genuinely don't know. But that doesn't stop the damage when a tourist tells a Scottish person they love your English accent. I've seen that go badly more times than I can count. I once watched an American man argue with a Polish museum guide in Krakow about World War II dates. He insisted D-Day was 1944, which is correct. But he also insisted that's when the war ended for Poland. The guide, whose grandmother survived the Warsaw Uprising, explained Poland's war didn't end until 1945, and the occupation continued in different forms for decades. The American said, well, in real history, it ended in 1944. Real history. In Poland. The guide walked away. I don't blame her. The pattern repeats everywhere. In Rome, tourists ask where the Colosseum is while standing directly in front of it. They saw it in photos and expected it to look different, cleaner, less old. In Athens, someone asked me when they built the Parthenon to look so ancient. They thought it was a replica. When I said 447 BC, they laughed and said, no, really. They weren't joking. They couldn't process that something could be that old and still standing. I worked the front desk at a hostel in Amsterdam for 3 years. The service culture shock hits Americans harder than jet lag, and it never stops being weird to witness. This businessman in his 40s checks in on a Sunday afternoon. Nice suit, fancy luggage, very polite. He asks what time room service ends. I tell him we don't have room service, we're a hostel. He looks confused but says, okay. An hour later, he comes back down. How do I get food delivered to my room? I explain we have a shared kitchen, or he can order delivery from restaurants, but we don't bring food to rooms. He stares at me, but I'm a guest. I nod. Right, but we're not a hotel. We're a hostel. He booked it himself on Booking.com. He saw the price, the shared bathrooms, the bunk beds in the photos. Somehow, none of that registered. He stays 4 nights and complains daily that we don't have concierge service. The service expectations run deeper than hotels. Americans don't realize that European servers aren't working for tips the same way. They have salaries, benefits, and no incentive to hover. So when an American sits down at a cafe in Amsterdam and the server doesn't come over immediately, they assume it's bad service. It's not. You're supposed to flag them down when you're ready. It's considered respectful to give diners space. I watched this play out at the cafe next to our hostel. A couple in their 30s sat down and waited. And waited. After 15 minutes, the woman got up and found the server inside. We've been waiting forever. This is ridiculous. The server, a Dutch woman in her 20s, didn't apologize. You didn't call me over. The American woman's face went red. You're supposed to come to us. That's how restaurants work. The server just shrugged. Not here. The woman demanded to speak to a manager. The manager said the same thing. They left a one-star review online calling the place hostile to Americans. The cafe is booked solid 6 weeks in advance. They're doing fine. Here's where it gets messy. Tipping culture. An American guy comes to check out, sees the no tipping sign at our desk, and insists on leaving cash anyway. For good service, he says. I try to refuse. Company policy. We don't accept tips. He puts it on the counter and walks away like he's done something generous. My manager makes me put it in the charity jar. The American thought he was being nice. He actually made things uncomfortable because he couldn't accept that we work differently. But the worst case was in a restaurant in Budapest. I was eating dinner and watched this whole thing unfold. American family, 4 people, running the server ragged. Extra napkins, more water, different silverware, substitute ingredients. The server handled it professionally. At the end, they left a 25% tip and made a big show of it. For your excellent service, the server thanked them. After they left, I heard her tell another server in Hungarian. They treated me like a servant for an hour and think money makes it okay. The tip was appreciated, but the attitude wasn't. They never understood the difference. In Germany, I watched an American woman try to return a dress she'd worn to a wedding. She had the receipt, the tags. She'd carefully reattached them. The store clerk explained they don't accept returns on worn items. The woman argued for 20 minutes about customer satisfaction guarantees, and the customer is always right. The clerk repeated store policy. Eventually, the woman left, furious, posting on Facebook about communist retail policies. The dress cost 40 euros. She spent an hour fighting over 40 euros because she couldn't accept that German consumer law works differently than American return policies. The fundamental issue is this: Americans are raised in a service culture where the customer has tremendous power. That's not universal. In most of Europe, there's mutual respect between customer and service worker, not a hierarchy. When Americans arrive expecting American-style service, they interpret European norms as rudeness. They're not being deliberately difficult. Their entire framework for how transactions work is different. But that doesn't make the collision any less uncomfortable for everyone involved. I drove a taxi in Dublin for 5 years before moving to Scotland. You learn things about tourists in a taxi, especially when systems they take for granted suddenly don't exist. This American woman gets in at the airport, heading to a hotel in the city center. Normal fare. We're driving, and she asks, "Do you take credit cards?" I say yes. She visibly relaxes. Oh, good. I hate carrying cash. We get to her hotel. The fare is 32 euros. She hands me her card. It's a magnetic stripe only, no chip. My reader can't process it. I explain she needs to use the chip, or I can take cash. She doesn't have euros yet. She also doesn't understand what I mean by chip. It's a normal card, she keeps saying. In Ireland in 2018, magnetic stripe cards were basically extinct. I end up calling my dispatcher to process it over the phone, while she gets increasingly frustrated that her normal card isn't working. The whole thing takes 15 minutes. She doesn't tip, which is fine. Ireland doesn't have tipping culture for taxis. But she leaves a review saying I refused her payment method. I didn't refuse anything. Her technology was a decade out of date. The payment issues are constant. Americans don't realize their credit cards are behind European standards. Chip and PIN has been default here since the mid-2000s. Contactless payment is everywhere. But American tourists show up with magnetic stripe cards and get confused when they don't work at train kiosks, parking meters, or self-checkout machines. They think the machines are broken. The machines are fine. Their cards are the problem. Then there's the measurement chaos. I picked up a family in Galway heading to a beach 5 miles away. I start driving. After about 7 kilometers, the dad asks how much further. I say we're almost there. He checks his phone. We've gone way past 5 miles. I explain 5 Irish miles is 8 kilometers. He insists a mile is a mile. I point out that Ireland uses kilometers on road signs and has for decades. He shows me his phone, which converted the Irish 5 km to 3.1 miles, and he mentally rounded it to 5. We'd gone exactly the right distance. He was converting conversions. I didn't charge him for the argument time. Temperature is even worse. I picked up a guy in Cork who was upset his weather app was broken. It said 20 degrees, and he packed for cold weather. He's wearing a winter coat in June. He's sweating. I asked to see his app. It's set to Celsius. He didn't know Celsius existed. 20 degrees Celsius is 68 Fahrenheit. Perfect summer weather. He spent 2 days being miserably hot because he didn't understand temperature scales. When I explained it, he said, "Why doesn't Europe just use normal degrees?" I didn't have a good answer for that one, but the absolute peak was a woman I drove in Belfast. She needed to mail a package back to America. I drop her at the post office. 20 minutes later, she calls me, furious, saying they refused to help her. I come back. She's standing outside, red-faced. I go inside. The clerk explains that she wanted to mail a package, but didn't have the recipient's zip code. She had the street address in California, but not the zip code. Without it, the Irish postal system can't process it. She kept insisting the address is enough and couldn't understand why they needed this extra number. Zip codes aren't optional in international mail. She called it bureaucratic nonsense and left without mailing her package. Banking is its own nightmare. An American student got into my cab in Dublin, crying. She'd been at an ATM for 30 minutes, and it ate her card. I drive her back to the ATM. There's a sign. This ATM does not return cards. Please visit bank during business hours. It's a security feature. Her card is being held inside until she shows ID at the bank. She thought the machine malfunctioned. She'd tried 4 different ATMs and they all ate her cards. She had no access to money until Monday morning. 4 cards, all sitting in machines across Dublin, waiting to be retrieved. She never read the signs. The pattern is always the same. Americans assume systems work like American systems. When they don't, it must be an error, or inefficiency, or someone being difficult. It never occurs to them that these systems evolved differently, for different reasons, and work fine for the people who live there. The problem isn't the system. The problem is expecting Ireland to work like Iowa or Norway to work like Nebraska. It won't, and getting mad about it just makes everything harder. But the story that still makes me laugh happened at a border crossing between Austria and Italy. I wasn't working. I was on vacation, sitting in a cafe at this little mountain checkpoint. Not really a checkpoint anymore, just a building that used to be one. No guards, no inspection, just a historical marker and a coffee shop. This American couple pulls up in a rental car. They get out, looking around confused. The man walks into the cafe and asks the barista, "Where's passport control?" She tells him there isn't one. Schengen zone, open borders. He doesn't believe her. "We're going from Austria to Italy. That's 2 different countries. We need our passports stamped." The barista, in careful English, explains that 27 European countries have open borders. No stamps, no checks, you just drive through. He pulls out his passport, opens it to show her the empty pages. "But we need stamps. For proof we were here." She offers to take a photo of them with the old border sign. He declines. "That's not official," his wife joins in. "What if someone asks where we've been? How do we prove it?" The barista suggests receipts, photos, literally anything else. They're not satisfied. They want bureaucracy. They want official stamps. They want borders to feel like borders. The man stands there for a solid 5 minutes, passport in hand, looking around for someone to stamp it. There's no one. There hasn't been anyone there since 1997. Eventually, they get back in their car and drive into Italy, visibly disappointed that crossing an international border was as complicated as crossing from New Jersey into Pennsylvania. I sipped my coffee and thought about all the stories I'd collected over the years. The measurement confusions, the geography mistakes, the service culture clashes. None of these people were bad people. They weren't stupid or mean. They were just profoundly unprepared for the reality that the rest of the world works differently. And in their confusion, they often made things worse, demanding American solutions to European situations, insisting their way was the normal way, getting frustrated when reality didn't match their expectations. The respect issue isn't about individual interactions going wrong. It's cumulative. It's the waiter in Paris who's heard, "Don't you speak English?" 40 times this week. It's the German store clerk who's explained the return policy to confused Americans every day for a month. It's the Scottish tour guide who's corrected the England-Scotland thing so many times she's developed a script. Each individual American might only make 1 or 2 mistakes, but locals deal with hundreds of Americans, all making the same mistakes, all surprised when things work differently, all expecting the world to adjust to them instead of the other way around. And these stories? They never stop coming. Right now, somewhere in Stockholm, an American is probably trying to pay for a coffee with cash in a cashless cafe. In Lisbon, someone's arguing about portion sizes. In Prague, a tourist is wondering why the castle gift shop won't take dollars. It's happening constantly, in every tourist city, in every season. A never-ending stream of small confusions that add up to a big reputation problem. The saddest part? Most of it could be avoided with 15 minutes of research before the flight. But that won't happen. And tomorrow, I'll probably witness another version of these same stories, just with different details. Because the gap between expectation and reality never quite closes, and the culture shock never quite wears off, and the rest of the world keeps stubbornly refusing to work like America. That's the kind of cultural gap I track across every story on this channel. Not to mock it, but to understand it. If you've made it this far, you're clearly one of the people who sees the world beyond borders. Subscribe and stay ahead of the next misunderstanding before it even happens. It's exhausting, but at least it's never boring.